Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are not quite at 11 o'clock yet, and we're still getting folks connected into the room. But if you're joining us here this morning and you want to open the chat and introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from today, it's kind of fun to see who joins us from farthest away. Right, seeing a lot of folks from Kansas. Looks like right now Dodge City might be winning.
Where's Plainville? I don't even know. This is going to get real spooky for me because I don't know where anything. I'm not from Kansas, so I don't know anything about Kansas. Where's Plainville at?
It is along I-70, about 20 miles north of Hayes along I-70. So it's halfway between Denver and Kansas City.
Got it. Okay. I kind of know.
All right, we're getting new folks connected. If you're just joining and you want to add to chat, introduce yourself and where you're joining us from today. I think York, Nebraska might be winning in terms of who's farthest away right now.
Further north than Dodge. Okay.
We've had somebody from Jacksonville, Florida join a couple of times. And so if she returns, she is always the champion.
Yeah, Jacksonville's pretty. That's pretty far. Unless somebody from Maine shows up.
All right. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves and letting us know where you're coming from. It's a little bit after 11, so I want to make sure that we can get through our workshop today. So we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning and welcome everyone to the Community Engagement Institute Spring 2023 Rising to the Challenge Workshop Series. If we haven't met before, my name is Zane May. I'm coming to you from Wichita, Kansas, and I work in organizational development at the Institute. If you're interested in learning more about CEI and the work that we do, you can always check us out online, visit our address, and learn about us on our website. But also we encourage you to reach out and start a conversation with us if you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do. I'm joined today by Percy Turner, who's going to lead us through our 5th workshop in this series. And Percy's going to talk to us about self-care. This is a 6-part workshop series that as a whole has been focused on the ways that we can take care of ourselves and be better prepared to navigate challenges with resilience and intention. We'll be wrapping up our series with the next workshop on Wednesday, April 26th at 11 o'clock in the morning again, and then we'll be posting that series on YouTube to view later. If you have any technical issues during the meeting, please feel free to reach out to me in the chat and I'll help you to the best of my ability. I'll also include my email address in the chat here in a second if you need to email me. We have an hour here together today, so I want to hand it over to Percy to start this workshop for us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Percy Turner. I also work with Wichita State University. I work largely doing organizational development, and what I found over the last year and some change is that learning and development is kind of the arm that best fits me. So I develop trainings for state partners, for nonprofit partners, for anybody who needs them, and we just do it on a variety of topics. Self-care was one of my first loves and one of the first trainings that I ever created for state partners. So hopefully this is something that will resonate with you all and something that you will kind of enjoy. And ironically, I've titled this Caring for Yourself, a brief overview as to why you don't feel like doing it. So I'm going to be a few things today. Hopefully one of those things is knowledgeable, but one of the things definitely without fail will be accusatory. I'm accusing you all of not taking care of yourselves because you don't feel like it. So first and foremost, how dare you? Secondly, we're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about why we shy away from self-care, what that does to us, what that does to the work that we do, and we'll just kind of dive right in. So, number one, when it comes to self-care, I want you to take a second and think about what happens when you hear somebody starting to talk about this particular topic. One of the biggest challenges that I've had talking about self-care and trying to train on it is kind of fighting back against some of the pushback around self-care kind of being a fad. So I want you to look at what you see on the slide, and in the chat, tell me some more things about positive elements of self-care. What do you hear? What triggers in your mind when you hear self-care in a positive way? So take, let's say, 2 minutes, toss some things in the chat that are positive that you hear around self-care. I'm seeing self-preservance, self-preservation. Put on your oxygen mask first. I love that. Exercise time, burnout prevention, treat yourself. Taking care of myself so I can take care of others. Love it. It is necessary, says Victoria. Tolerating stress. Can't pour from an empty cup. One of my very favorite ideologies around self-care. Better work performance, I see. Remember you. Ooh, I might have to steal that from you, Melinda. Eat healthy, says Cheryl. Creating a life worth living. Treating yourself like someone you love. It helps curb overwhelming situations. All of these are absolutely correct and fantastic. And I want you to be able to keep these in mind when the rubber meets the road and you need some care yourself. All of these wonderful, fantastic, positive elements can also be added to what I have here, that self-care is necessary. Self-care is a treat. Treat yourself. Person-centered, it is something that I think it is an interesting thing to be an advocate for person-centered language and for person-centered treatment, and then to shy away from self-care. Self-care is a fantastic embodiment of person-centered practice, and something that I think that everybody who advocates for person-centered care should be thinking about and taking into account. It is capacity building. It does build resilience, and often it can save a job, a relationship, and ourselves. Becoming more self-aware, says Chelsea. Also, I like that Heather adds not being apologetic to taking time for yourself. And we're going to talk about some of the stigma, and I think that that is a great segue into some of the eye rolling. So I didn't want to say negative because I don't feel like there are negative elements to self-care, but I definitely feel like over the last few years, self-care has become something that people go, all right, let's talk about this again. So here are some things that I've put here. It's kind of new agey. It's fad oriented. It's a lot of talk. People will talk about, hey, you need to care for yourself more. I've had this conversation with old bosses of mine. Hey, you really need to practice some self-care. By the way, we have 4 new deadlines and I need you to come in on Saturday. But really, you really need to think about taking some time for yourself. It can be time consuming. It can be in place of equity, which is another thing that I think is it's kind of used as a shield as to like, well, we're not going to give you a raise, but let me tell you, you should really take care of yourself. Well, we're not going to treat you like a human being, but you know what you can do is treat yourself like a human being and take care of yourself. And then it can also be something that is one size fits all, right? Just do the meditation, just learn about mindfulness, just take a yoga class, and that's self-care. What are some other elements, and use the chat again, another 1 to 2 minutes. What are some elements that make you roll your eyes when you hear about self-care? Ooh, some look at it as a crutch. Who has the time? The work is too important to stop. Love that. Suck it up, buttercup. Hear that a lot, right? It's the good old bootstrapping argument. I don't wear boots specifically for that reason. I haven't worn boots in years. Just take more bubble baths. The to-do list is already too long. Why add more? Breathing is my self-care. I hear why it's important, but how? How can I take care of myself? I love what I do. Working feels good. This is another real big thing. And I think there's a cultural element that kind of touches on that. This idea that we have to love our work. We love our work. And we love it so much that there's no reason why we're having fun at work. There's no reason why we should be taking care of ourselves. The work is taking care of us. Take a break. What's that? People who use it to be selfish with their time. I ate and slept. Doesn't that count? What else should I do? Who has time for self-care? Ugh. Love it. Okay, so you're absolutely right. There are more things we have to remember to take time for ourselves the way we care for others. Love that. Thank you, Michelle. We are going to do a little bit of diving into our own business culture and some of the reasons why we might not want to care for ourselves. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an agenda just as a way to hold me accountable for this material. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to break down the self. When we talk about self-care, I really wanted to approach it from literally breaking down the words self and care. So we're going to approach it from that particular angle. The first thing we're going to do is break down ourselves. We're going to use our evaluative understanding to see a need for care. We're going to determine what that means for us. And then we're going to talk about kind of how to vary the approach, because one size doesn't fit all. And something that might be fantastic and calming and wonderful for you on Tuesday doesn't do squat on Thursday, right? That doesn't mean you never do it again. It just means you have different needs. Right. And then we're going to talk about evaluation and how we can determine effectiveness. Then we're going to break down care. And we're going to talk about what we're looking for. A lot of times there was something someone said earlier, how do I hear that we are supposed to do this, but what do I do? Right. So adding things to the list is generally the understanding of what self-care is. It's putting yourself on a list, and we'll get to why that's difficult in and of itself. But what are we really looking for when it comes to self-care? What do you need to take care of? Because self-care feels like a really big umbrella term, but there's a lot of nuanced amount of care that you need personally, that you need Monday and not Tuesday, and Wednesday and not Friday, and so on and so forth. So being able to really find a mechanism that helps you look at, okay, what kind of care do I need? Maybe it's a full-blown spa day, and maybe it's 5 minutes between meetings, because since we've done Zoom, we don't take meetings seriously. We don't take travel for meetings anymore, right? You're going to click out of this meeting and go right into work. You're not going to have 5 minutes to reset yourself. You're not going to have that travel time to reset and change. If you're working remotely, then your house has become your business, your place of business. So those boundaries that used to exist don't exist anymore. So when we're thinking about what we need and the kind of care we need, we have to be specific and understand how to address those specific needs, which is why one size doesn't fit all. We're going to talk about constructing plans. We're going to talk about considering boundaries as a necessary portion of self-care. And then we're going to talk about two kinds of self-care. Now, I have kind of created this ideology of action and passive. So we're going to talk about passive self-care. We're going to talk about active self-care. Okay. So these are the things that I want you to kind of hold accountable. So by the end of this, hopefully we have covered everything. Now, keep in mind, I got a little less than an hour. So we're going to do the best that we can with what we have. So first and foremost, let's talk about the self. Let's talk about us. Now, this is something, probably one of the more eye-rolling elements of self-care. In order to care for yourself, you have to have a relationship with you. You have to know what you need. You have to know where you struggle. You have to know what you're good at and what comes difficult to you. You have to know how you gain energy and how you lose energy, right? And all of that, you may, I won't say you, I will use myself as an example, and I will not let anybody identify you. Nobody in the room is allowed to identify with what I'm getting ready to say. I don't pay attention to myself very well because I'm really, really good at caring for everybody else. I have known Zane for years. The look on Zane's face clues me into what he needs. He doesn't have to say anything. 9 times out of 10, the way that Zane's looking right now, I'm like, okay, I know exactly what's going on with Zane, and we'll have a conversation. We know each other well. We've been working together for years. I can do that with Zane any given day. But I don't look in the mirror nearly as often as I look at my friends. I don't consider my needs nearly as often as I consider my wife's needs or my children's needs or my grandchildren's needs. Now, keep in mind, none of this is you. This is all me. I'm just talking for myself. So when it comes to self-care, I can tell you how to take care of my wife. I can tell you how to take care of my kids. I can tell you how to take care of everybody else in my life. But when it comes to me, I don't know. If you said, hey, Percy, what do you do to take care of yourself? I'd shrug at you. Because I don't need to. I'm fine. That's my answer, right? But I'm not fine. And to be honest with you, most days, I don't really know whether I'm fine or not, right? When something happens that's bad, then I know. But any other time, I'm all right, right? I'm kind of in an eternal neutral place where it's kind of, I'm all right. It's fine. Everything is okay, right? Self-care is about having a nuanced and specific understanding of yourself. You wouldn't ask somebody who doesn't know anything about you to build you a plan to take care of you, right? Anybody, a therapist, a nurse, a doctor, they have information, they learn about you, they ask you questions, they fellowship with you, and then you get to build something together that's about your strengths and weaknesses, that's about where you're at right now. But how can you take care of somebody you don't know? So if you're not in the business of understanding yourself, if you're not in the business of really developing a knowledge base of you, how can you achieve some type of meaningful self-care? The only thing that's left for you, if you don't have a nuanced understanding of yourself, is fads. Is all the stuff you see on TikTok, is all the stuff you see on YouTube, is all the stuff that gets sold to you that's telling you, oh, well, this is going to relieve that. But those people don't know you. But luckily, maybe not luckily, but honestly, if you're not digging into who you really are, then you don't know yourself either. So that's what is a big struggle when it comes to self-care. So the first thing that we can do to change this particular understanding is to learn about ourselves and have a real honest conversation about us. So here are some things that I'm going to posit to you, that I'm going to gift to you, that maybe we need to learn about ourselves. So the first thing is energy management. And what I mean by that is, how do you gain what gives you life and what steals it away from you? Right? One of the easiest ways to think about this is to conceptualize this. For a while, it was really, really popular, the idea of introversion versus extroversion, right? Everybody fairly familiar with this? Can I get like an emoji or something if you've heard the term introvert, extrovert? Yeah. So the ideology around introversion and extroversion, as with anything that becomes popular, there's a big misunderstanding, right? For a long time, me too, Heather. For a long time, people thought that introversion and extroversion was linked to what you like and what you don't like. And so when you ask somebody, hey, are you an introvert? An ambivert is somebody who's kind of stuck in the middle. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's someone who is able to gain energy from being around people and fellowshipping and like an extrovert does, and someone who is also able to gain energy from small group or solitary actions like introverts do. And being able to gain energy in either way also means you can lose energy in either way. So, for example, after this meeting, after talking with this wonderful group of people, I'm going to be exhausted, right? Even though I have the most energy, I am getting the most energy right now from doing this. I love it very much. So that's kind of a little bit of that kind of in the middle. It could be good or it could be bad. It really just depends on the situation and how you're gaining energy in the moment. Having that said, learning how you gain and lose energy is a huge part of self-care. So if you're somebody who identifies, I lose energy in groups of people, and someone says, oh, well, just join a class, join a gym and go to workout classes. Well, if I'm somebody who gains energy from solitary or small group activities, that's not going to work for me, right? So just that little bit of information begins to change the landscape of what might be effective for you. because not everything is effective for everybody. So the more you learn about yourself, the more you can arm yourself with that information and figure out things that work for you. If you're an extrovert and someone says, oh, just take a long walk. Well, if I'm taking a long walk by myself and I'm an extrovert, I'm going to be exhausted by the end of it. That's not going to give me energy back. Right? So if my understanding of how I gain or lose energy, if I don't know it, if I've never thought about it, then it's going to be difficult for me to determine what works and what doesn't when it comes to self-care. The same thing is true for our next bit, which is peace. What gives you peace? Where are you? What's a peaceful moment for you? What's a peaceful memory that you have? What are some triggers that you may have? What are some things that you know, okay, I will not do that, right? Being in loud spaces for some folks, going to a restaurant where it's jam-packed. If you've ever been to a popular restaurant at lunchtime, it's or a bar at 6 or 7 during happy hour. These are big, loud, times that if you're somebody who gains energy from small group activity, it's going to hurt you. This isn't going to be great for you. So if someone says, oh, come out with us, self-care, come out with us, hang out with us, party with us, this might be great for you. It might not. And your ability to know about yourself and where you gain peace and where you get triggered or where you struggle is incredibly important. Same thing for your triumphs and losses. Keep in mind that as you endeavor to care for yourself, this might not be something that is only action-based. What are some things that you can keep in mind when the going gets tough? What are some things that when you're like, all right, I'm ready to give up, what are some triumphs that you can go back to remind yourself of how strong you are? What are some losses that you can think about that remind yourself of where you don't want to be? I start seeing myself getting depressed. I remember 10 years ago, my depression got to this level. Man, I'm going to combat that. I'm going to do whatever I can to never do that again. I learned from that particular loss. So these things will inform when I feel like I need self-care, what I feel like I need to do and what could be effective for me, and kind of who I need to surround myself with. And we'll get to that here in a little bit. But these are all things about you that you can be learning to help inform your self-care choices. If you choose not to learn any of these things, you're basically going to be beholden to just kind of searching for things, and it's going to be trial and error. And that's exhausting, right? The idea of, I want this to make me feel better, and then without any knowledge of yourself or what could help you, just diving into things, and then if it's not right, you start to blame yourself for that. And that's not fair. Right? So give yourself a little grace, learn about yourself a little bit, and cut out the middleman there. Heather says, my saying is keep on trudging, keep going forward, because it is not good to keep in the past. So part of that is fantastic. And also that could be a little daunting. That could be something that actually works against you later. There might be some time where you need to stop. And I'm going to give you something to kind of identify some of that. When we talk about the need for care, here's some questions that you can sit with. Ask yourself these questions. When am I happiest? Now we're doing a little bit of professional work here, so I added the in my work. But when am I happiest? When is that? Is that sitting alone with a book? Is that working by myself in the office? There was a time, and Zane knows, when we were pre-pandemic, our office was full of people all the time. And there were people everywhere. And then it was great. And then post-pandemic, or not post-pandemic, but as the pandemic was happening, it was a ghost town. And to this day, there's maybe 5 or 6 people in the office at any given time. That place can hold over 60 folks, right? And so for some of us, going into a place where there are no people and you can spread out and you can really focus and there's no distractions is really energizing. And for some people, it's really not. It's really hard to feel like you are all alone in a place. When am I happiness? When does exhaustion or burnout, like when does it happen and what does it look like for me? I know people who get, right before they burn out, they get super energetic. They try and do 4 or 5 things at once, right? And that's my cue to let them know, oh, okay, you're over functioning right now. There's a problem, right? Let's sit and have this conversation. There's some folks who they start being absent from work, they start taking sick days, they start not showing up for things, they start having more of kind of a negative attitude about things, but it's different for everyone. Burnout does not look the same. So because you've experienced burnout, and I'm sure that the majority of us in the working world have at some point experienced some level of burnout, it might look different for you than it does for other folks. So identifying, what does that look like for me? When I'm feeling burnt out, what do I do? How am I checking in? How do I even know that I'm burning out? What are some things that I do to show that I'm stressed? This is another very simple thing. For me, I'm a video game player. I love playing video games. I can play video games all day, every day. I don't, because I have responsibilities, right? But when I start to feel burned out, I can get lost in a show. I can binge 12 episodes of the same show. I can play 4 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours of the same game. And it's just an escape for me. And I have to start recognizing, okay, when is my hobby becoming my escape? Right? Those sort of things. Yes, loss of motivation, says Haley. Love it. What are some of those things that show that I'm stressed? Another thing that shows that I'm stressed is what Haley is saying, that loss of motivation. So if there's something I absolutely love doing, and one day I start and I don't, it doesn't give me that same motivation, it doesn't give me that same boost of endorphins, I might sit back and think, okay, what's going on with me? I love this. I love doing this. Karaoke was like that for me. I love karaoke. I can mess up some songs on the stage. I'm not very good at it, but I love it. It's one of my favorite things. So if I'm in a place where I don't want to do that because I don't like it anymore, that's not just me changing my mind. That might be something to do with, I might need to take some time for myself and figure some things out. And then on the other side of that, what are some things that I know when I'm functioning well, when things are going good, what am I doing? What does that look like? I'm waking up early, I'm eating well, I'm nice, all of these things. Knowing, what does it look like when it's bad? What does it look like when it's good? Right? And how do I feel in both spaces? These things are the roadmap to what kind of care is going to work for you. But again, if we don't do this work, we're just kind of blindly feeling around in the dark, hoping that we hit something that makes us feel better. And that seems like a wild way to take care of yourself, right? So let's think of it like a building experience. Our foundation here is our knowledge of self. Every self-care plan, I'm actually going to show you a self-care plan by the end of this. Every self-care plan, the foundation is knowledge. The foundation is knowledge of self. Then once we get an understanding of that knowledge, then we can start asking questions. We can start saying things like, what do I need? And the urgent care boost and upkeep, we're going to get to that in just a minute, but I've made 3 levels of self-care activity. Urgent care is something has to change and it has to change now. Right? This is your ER level self-care. This is I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to say something mean to somebody I love. I'm going to break this vase in my hands. I'm going to do something drastic because I'm feeling a certain way. And if I don't stop feeling this way, I'm going to, this could be dangerous for me. A boost, I'm not feeling good. It's not good. Things have tipped to the bad side of the scale, and I need to get myself back to 50%. I need to get myself back to baseline. And then upkeep is about, I'm feeling good. Everything is good. How do I keep this feeling for as long as possible? What can I do to continue this the way that it's currently going, right? So we have change now, we have boost to get back on par, and then we have, how do I keep this up? And then what are some factors? What are some other things we need to consider? Things that like, how much time is this going to take? Where am I right now? Can I do some of the self-care things that I know? Is that acceptable where I'm at? Right? Does this have any conditions? Is the activity that I'm considering, does it call for me to be alone? Does it call for me to be in a group? What logistics are involved when it comes to taking care of myself? And then last, but I think probably the most important, and a question that I don't see asked enough, how do I want to feel when I'm done? Right? So I am somebody who I don't do it as much as I used to anymore, which need to get back into my self-care routine. I love going to the gym. And when I'm done at the gym, I want to feel tired and satisfied. Also, I love reading. I have my audiobook account has many books in it. One of my favorite book series is 14 books long. I listen to books or read books pretty much all day. And how I want to feel when I'm done reading is very different than how I want to feel when I'm done at the gym. Right? Self-care looks different, and the way that we want to feel when we're done with an activity might also look different. If I'm in a place of urgent care, then the gym might work out for me because maybe I want to get out a lot of energy. So when I'm done, I want to feel tired and I want to feel satisfied. But upkeep, it might be me listening to a happy song. I want to feel excited. I want to feel like I want to continue the streak and feel like I can conquer the world, right? How I want to feel when we're done is incredibly important. So we've already talked a little bit about these three approaches because I don't know how to stick to my own facilitation guide. I've kind of gotten ahead of myself here, but the three major approaches again, now or else, that's our urgent care. Boost is that we're getting over the hump. We're heading down and we want to kind of boost ourselves back up. And then upkeep is keeping the good as long as we can. So now, what we've done is we've introduced a whole bunch of different pieces of data around self-care, right? And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about experimenting and evaluation with all of this data. So I've asked you to learn about yourself. I've asked you to vary your approach. I've asked you to think about what you want to feel like when you're done. I've asked you to think about various ways to take care of yourself. Now, the thing that you can do as you're doing some of this exploration is evaluate your care. What works really well? When it comes to a boost activity, when it comes to something that's like, hey, it's Thursday evening, we're getting ready to get into the weekend, and I'm already starting to feel crabby. I'm just not feeling it. I don't feel terrible, but I'm headed down the road. What works? What doesn't? What's not in that category, right? And asking yourself some of these simple questions, what's something, and always start from what works. Everybody here already has some elements of self-care. Whether you believe it or not, you're already performing and doing things that work for you, that make you feel better, that pull you out of despair. All of these things are something that you already have the skills to do. This is more about being intentional about utilizing those skills. So start there. What's something that you're currently doing now that maintains you? And this kind of goes back to one of the earlier questions. When things look good, what does that look like for you, right? What are some of those activities that you're doing when things are good? What are something that calms you down when you're upset? You get some bad news, you're, whatever it may be, you're nervous about something, you're anxious about something. What's something that you do that puts you in a different state of mind when you're upset? And what's something that when it's not an emergent situation, but you're feeling down, you're feeling sad, what's something that brings you up, right? These are those starter questions. And then you can start dissecting. So if I were to say, I got 30 minutes. Okay, we're good. If I were to say, hey, for example, when I am down, I like to write, right? I really enjoy just writing. I write poetry, I write short stories. And so I just like to be creative. So I will just start kind of making something up, make a little thing for myself. When I'm done with that, I feel like I have created something. And that creation is something that I can be proud of, right? For some people, it's cleaning. I'll go to a space in my house, and I'll look and I'll see there's a mess here. When I'm done, I want to feel like I've accomplished something. I want to look back at that room and know that room looks different. It feels different. It smells different because of my effort, because I've done something. And that something has an impact on my immediate surrounding. Right? So what I'm doing here is I'm taking activities and then I'm assigning emotional value to them. Right? And what we're trying to do here is figure out, okay, what else can give me that feeling? So we have a couple things in the chat. When I'm stressed, says Michelle, I start to close up to others around me, right? This is a fantastic thing to know. So if somebody approaches you before you know you're stressed, probably the people around you are seeing some of those markers, right? So being able to listen to folks to be able to identify, oh, I might need some self-care, I might need a boost here. Kristen says cup of coffee in the morning and taking time to reflect. So that's time by oneself. You're drinking this cup of coffee, you are reflecting on your own. How do you want to feel when you're done? Right? And what else can give you that feeling of quiet reflection? Where else can you do that? Right? How many ways can you find that peace and quiet and reflection? And then you can kind of think about all of these different activities that might allow you to do that. Going on drives, for example, it's a great place where you're mechanically kind of doing something. Your brain is paying attention to something, but you can be a million miles away on the highway, right? That sort of thing is very close to the idea of having a cup of coffee in the morning and sitting and reflecting, right? It's that kind of thing that I want you to start thinking about. I really like this activity. What are some other activities that can be in that wheelhouse that give me a similar feeling? Heather says, if things are massively clean, my hubs is afraid. I totally understand that. When I was a kid, my mother, I can't remember what happened. My mother and I got into an argument and I cleaned my room and she came in afterwards and she said, I should make you angry more often. This room looks fantastic. And I thought this is not an appropriate joke to make, but I laughed. And it taught me very, very quickly that me feeling like I am out of control and cleaning something as a way to regain some control for myself is really, really important. So what are some other things that help me feel like I'm in control? Right? Kendra, I like to knit. It turns off my brain and I end up with a scarf eventually. Love it. Also, not now because it's getting hot for no good reason, but I might need one of them scarves as winter gets closer. So keep me in mind. If anyone feels the need to clean, I will volunteer my house, just saying. I would love to join the Dirty House Coalition where angry people could just come in and angrily clean. I'd love it. Any day after work, I look forward to playing my guitar. Love this. I know I need a break if I haven't picked it up in a few days, right? So that's a great example. So playing guitar is something that is both mental and physical, because anybody who's ever played guitar knows your hands, the dexterity that's required in your hands, the pads of your fingers and how you feel after that. This is a very sensory thing, right? So it's not just about hearing. It's also about being able to make the music the way that you want to. It's also about precision, being able to place your fingers in a specific place in a specific way. These things are skills that you build, and when you're done and as you're improving, these things are milestones and things you can feel good about. You've played through a song, that's a good feeling. Take a walk. After work, I look forward to silence and making a cup of coffee. Yes, at 6 p.m. I love this. Coffee doesn't affect me. I can have a pot of coffee and take a nap. So I completely understand this idea of after work, this is what you like to do. I'm with it. Being in a room with no one and no sounds, just reacting. Yes, just relaxing. Also, yes, from what I understand, this will be posted on YouTube. If you are in a situation where you need to move on, I totally get it. These videos will be up on YouTube. I don't know for how long, or I don't know how long it'll take, but I do know that this material will be available again. So yeah, the idea of being in a room with no one and no sounds, right? How can you recreate that in other spaces? Again, I like the idea of driving. I like the idea of walking. These things are great. Wait, there's an after work time? Working from home blurs these lines 100%. I have a whole thing about how virtual work has changed everything about the way that we understand work. Work was very ritualistic pre-COVID. If you think about it, you got up, you had a specific ritual every morning, you had work clothes, you had, I mean, there right now, there are clothes that I don't wear any other place. I have a closet full of clothes I don't touch because I don't go to work very much anymore. And I'm definitely not going to wear them sitting around the house. Like this collared shirt, I'm not wearing this. If this was Saturday, I'm not putting this on. Are you kidding? I'm putting on the comfiest things possible, right? So I had work clothes. And so I would get up, I would do my ritual, I would have breakfast, I would have coffee, I would, take a shower, do whatever. I would go to a designated space where work exists. I would work for that amount of time. I would then leave that designated space and drive back to my safe space that doesn't have work in it, that's home. I would change out of my work clothes and into my evening wear, whether I was going out and I wanted to look good or whatever it may be, but I would change out of my work clothes and I would change into something else, and that would end my work time. If you're working from home right now, this is a struggle. When I work from home, my computer's right there. There was a point in time where I couldn't work over the weekend because my job was closed. But if I have an idea on Saturday, and Zane and I have talked about this, if I have an idea for a training on Saturday, my computer's right there. I could just go and knock that idea out. And more than often, I will now than I ever would before, because the lines are blurred. And that impacts the way that we care about ourselves. So you have to keep these kind of things in mind. I get out, I go out with my dogs for a walk, I get on my bike, I go for a run, I dance. Heather, you seem like a very physical person. So when you are doing these things, part of your self-care is moving your body. And probably also when you're done, you kind of want to feel a little tired. You want to feel like you've done something, right? And that's different from quiet reflection. I turn on some of my favorite music and I sing out loud. Love this. Do this often. This is yet another thing that, if you think about it, just think about all the different responses we've had in the chat. If I were to tell you, if you got into this training and I said, yoga, okay, everybody, have a good day. This wouldn't have this. A couple people, Heather might have nodded, but a couple other folks would have been like, well, this doesn't seem like it's going to work for me. It probably won't. Because how you want to feel when you're done taking care of yourself is not, you see what I'm saying? Everybody wants to feel a little bit different. Wine yoga? Ooh, I've heard of it. I've never done it because I'm afraid of stretching anyway. But stretching and drinking, not me. I will hurt myself. I will not be able to move, and I'll definitely fart next to somebody. Like, I feel like that would 100% happen. So what about care? We've talked a lot about concepts. We have conceptualized my face is turning blue. What about care? Okay, so first, we're going to talk about passive elements and active elements. Passive elements are things in your life that exist no matter what. Right? Your diet, your sleep schedule, your skincare, the way you dress, the relationships you have, these things, working in the community, your balance of work life. This is no matter what, whether you're stressed, whether you're not stressed, these are things that just exist in your world. You eat food, whether you like it or not, right? You sleep, whether it's a long time or a short time. Being more intentional about these things is a good way to take some passive elements of your life and make them care for you. Kristen says, as a parent, how do I help my children start to learn about themselves to be able to use self-care? Love this. So a couple things that you can be doing. I don't know how old your children are, but at any point in time, having them start to ask questions, 7 and 5, this is a perfect time to start asking, okay, so did you have fun? Yes, great. What about this? How do you feel now? If you had a good time, what about this was your favorite, right? And reminding them in other times about what was good. What did they really like? So if you really liked playing tag and you're tired now and you feel good and you're relaxing, what'd you like about that? Did you like running around? You're a physical person. That's great. Love physical people. And as they start to age and they start to kind of experience difficulty, you can suggest things that are close to that game of tag. Let's go for a run. Let's be physical. Let's do something physical. Let's dance. Let's jump. Right? And see how that reaction happens. If it is something that can take their mind out of that space, then like Heather, they are a physically grounded person. And because of that physical element, then that can be kind of the foundation for some of their self-care, right? Being able to be active and move about. If it is something that's not necessarily physical in nature, and now you guys are giving me a whole nother idea for a way to conceptualize self-care as physical and non-physical. But if it's not a physical thing, if a person doesn't love to do that, maybe they love to play instruments or listen to music or other things, you want to be able to identify that and identify how you feel as it's happening. And then you want to remind people, hey, this is how you were feeling when you were listening to this song. This was a good feeling. Let's keep that. Let's tuck that in the back of our minds. And when you're feeling down or when things aren't great, let's put that song on. And it can be an example. The biggest thing that you can do, and I say this for everybody, the biggest thing that you can do to teach your kids self-care is be an example. That's the biggest thing that you can do. You can kind of talk through it. I need to, dad needs to relax. So what dad's going to do is dad's going to have a quiet moment and make a cup of coffee because that's how I like to relax. Mom is going to go take a walk. Mom's going to go to a Zumba class because mom likes being physical. And as she gets physical, she gets all her energy out, all that bad energy out, and then she gets to relax after she's done. And that feeling of her muscles moving around and getting tired is part of mom's self-care, right? That kind of thing and being that kind of example is very, very good. My teenager and I both find music soothing. The music itself varies widely between the two of us. Love that. Right. And even asking questions. What song? So I used to ask my teen, I have 4 boys. I have 4 boys. They're all old now. My youngest is turning 23 tomorrow. Good grief. I have grandkids as well. I ask my kids all the time, this is the happiest day of your life. What music is playing? What song is on in the background? Right? This is the saddest day of your life. You just lost your job. You don't know whether you're going to, where you're going to stay tonight. What song is playing in the background? Right? And just kind of getting their minds to work around that if they love music. Jerry says, my son is 10 and I started when he was about 4, asking him daily how he was feeling, giving him the base words, mad, sad, glad, afraid. It has taught him how to identify feelings and express his concerns and needs. We still use it, but not so formally. And he opens up a great deal about his thoughts. Win, love it. Mom's going to retail therapy. Let's get it. You're aging well. Never would have guessed you. I do. I have grands. I have 2.5 grandchildren. That means I have 2 grandkids and there's 1 on the way. They're 4, getting ready to turn 5. And I always say 4 months. It's more like, how old is my kid? I think your daughter is like a month older than my grandson. So it's like almost a year now. I don't know. But yeah. So when we're talking about passive, these are the things that we're talking about. We're talking about elements that just exist in life. Right? And being intentional about those elements. When we're talking about active elements, we're talking about specific activities that you have earmarked that help restore you, that clear your mind, or return you to baseline, right? So here are some examples. Passive, sleep schedule, right? Eating habits, work-life balance, family relationships, things like that. Active, it could be yoga, could be meditation, could be the gym, could be reading, could be television, could be, but these are things that you choose to do. Passive things are things that you kind of have to do, whether you want to or not. Being intentional about the passive things helps you choose the active things more in more of a knowledgeable way. So, for example, if you didn't get good sleep last night, then it's possible that your active going to the gym might not work out very well because you didn't have good sleep. If you're not eating very well, then this might really negatively affect the way that you are able to sit calmly, right? If you got a stomach ache, it's hard to sit still, right? If you're experiencing indigestion or whatever it may be, if work is taking over your life right now, it's hard for you to come up with an activity, right? And this is what we saw the most of. If you look back, scroll up, a lot of what we talk about and a lot of what I hear when it comes to self-care is my work-life balance is absolutely nuts. How dare you ask me to put something else on this list? Well, before I ask you to put something else on the list, I'm going to ask you about your work-life balance. Let's talk about that first, right? That's a passive element that is ruining your ability to make active self-care choices. Don't ask what? Okay, so this is something that I've another thing that we do in self-care, and I know that I'm running, so let me get to my boundaries and my barriers, and then we'll go from there. So first and foremost, what are some things that are standing in the way? This is a great segue. First is boundaries. Boundaries often stand in the way of self-care, because we often value others more than we value ourselves. We've even in this culture, not in every culture, but in this culture, we have created shame around caring for ourselves because we put it in front of other people. We do this thing where we say, if you're taking care of yourself, you're putting yourself first. If you're putting yourself first, you're selfish. So you just have to take care of everybody else until you can't anymore, I guess. Or you have to feel appropriately guilty not taking care of somebody else in order to take care of yourself. And that's not how self-care works, right? You can engage in self-care practice and it doesn't have to take away from something else, right? Tricia says self-care initially felt selfish, but now it feels like self-preservation. Love it. So saying no is not the only way to create boundaries, but it is what most people understand easiest, right? Setting a boundary to most people means saying no when asked to do something. Now, that's not necessarily the case. There are plenty of boundaries that exist. For example, how many times have you known that you get off at 5 and stayed till 5:15, 5:30, so on and so forth? How many times have you skipped lunch because you had so much work to do? Or you ate lunch in your office and it was only 15 minutes instead of the full hour that you're supposed to get? When's the last time you took a 15-minute break? Remember 15-minute breaks when you were 17? They still exist. That's still a thing. You're supposed to take 15-minute breaks, right? These are things that are already boundaries. They already exist, but we don't pay attention to them. So just like you can practice self-care by dealing with passive things that are already in your life and being more intentional about adhering to them and listening to them, you can practice your boundary setting, not by telling your supervisor, no, I don't feel like doing my job today. By the way, I'm also taking a vacation, and stick it. You can start by taking breaks when you're supposed to, taking the full time of your lunch, doing some of these things that are already boundaries that you don't do. So you can start there. Looking at the other side of our thing, we have conflicting values. This is huge, and this will probably be what I kind of close on here. Conflicting values are things that we tell ourselves, and usually a lot of the barriers to self-care is that when we care for ourselves, we tell ourselves that they are going against these values. Wait, says Brenda, self-care takes time. This is time away from work that feels vital. There's only so much time in the day. I agree with you. And part of self-care doesn't have to be sectioning off a amount of time that is only for self-care. So I'll give you an example. Right now, after this meeting is over, chances are everybody's going to get right back to work, right? If you took 2.5 minutes, that's not destroying a day of work, right? But it is giving you some time to take a breath, to go to the bathroom, to take a walk around the building, to listen to a song. Everything is bite-sized now. You can listen to a TikTok for 60 seconds, right? But it just takes your brain out of going from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, right? This doesn't have to be an hour's worth of X. It can be just a few minutes, right? And when we're talking about taking care of yourself, these don't have to be big, huge things. You got to think of this like guerrilla warfare. You got to get it wherever you can. If you can take 5 minutes extra, yeah, absolutely. That's what I mean. So think about it like this. How many of you have had an experience with children? Either you're a parent, maybe you had younger brothers and sisters, maybe you had younger cousins you were kind of around taking care of, right? There are very few times you're going to get an hour to yourself if you have kids around, especially younger kids. But I have had an entire religious experience walking out of my minivan and walking around to open the door to get somebody out of a car seat, right? I have taken my time, taken a breath, wiped my brow, said a prayer, done all sorts of stuff in this few moments, instead of fretting about how bad my day is going to be, instead of worrying about what's going to happen when we get inside the store, instead just taking a minute where minutes present themselves to take care of yourself, right? So it doesn't always have to be a big deal. You kind of got to get in where you fit in. And again, once you start focusing on those passive elements, it's going to make the active elements that much easier for you. Look at these conflicting values. I'm last on the list. That means I'm a hard worker. I don't care about myself. That means I focus on others. I never say no. That means I'm flexible. I work beyond my hours. That means I'm a good employee. If I stop being last on my list, then I'm not a hard worker anymore. If I start caring for myself, I don't focus on other people. If I start saying no, then I'm rigid and I'm not flexible. These are the mental traps we put ourselves in. And one of the reasons why we will kind of tell ourselves, no, self-care is selfish. We're not supposed to do it. When in actuality, it's not, these things aren't fair to us. Okay, so this is a basic, we have just a few minutes left. This is a very basic self-care plan. What I want you to really focus on here is the top of the page. It gives you the columns, right? The columns are what's important. You have your support structure. That is, here are the situations, their time management, attention to role, then their strategies. We're going to say, here's what I want to do. Here's my goal. I want to take small breaks throughout the day. And then how am I specifically going to get that done? How am I specifically going to make that happen? After seeing a client, I'll take 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Focus on my breathing. Walk, right? So it is what arena, it is what's the strategy you want to employ, and then how am I actually going to employ that strategy? And there's a bunch of these, right? But it's always the same thing. What's the situation? What's my strategy? Let's get specific. Right? So I recognize that every single day only has so many hours in it. I recognize that. And I recognize that everybody is going to, at some point, have to decide how they prioritize things. I don't want you to think that in order to take care of yourself, you have to put yourself first, because that's way too much to ask out the gate. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just put yourself on the list, because most of us aren't even on the list. Last on the list for you would be an upgrade. So that's what I want you to do. If you learn nothing from this, put yourself on the list and get even just a few minutes of time to dedicate to taking care of yourself. And you'll be doing better than most of us. And you will have learned a little bit. And the more that you learn about you, the better chances you have of taking care of yourself. All right, that's what I got. Zane, it's up to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Percy. I'm going to put a link to our evaluation in the chat, and we'd appreciate your feedback on this short evaluation. We want to know how we're doing, and we're always looking for ways to improve our workshops to be more effective and engaging. We've also included a place that you can tell us about topics or trainings that would be helpful and engaging for you in future workshop series. And in previous surveys, we've heard that self-care and navigating conflict were important topics, so we built this workshop around those topics. Thank you all for joining us here today. We hope that we can see you at the 6th and final workshop, where Percy is going to join us again to talk about navigating conflict and difficult conversations. If you have any questions about the other workshop or you'd like to connect for a conversation, please reach out to myself or Percy, and we'd be happy to talk with you. We will see you all later, and these videos will be posted after the workshop is over.